Chapter 6, The Royal Kingdom, 1 Samuel 9-31, 2 Samuel, 1 Kings 1-11. The eternal throne and the covenant of kingship. The narrative swells to its ancient political height in the epoch of the royal kingdom. After the dark period of the judges, Israel was ready for a new form of leadership. The people grew weary of the cyclical anarchy and the lack of a centralized authority. They looked at the nations around them and said, "We want a king over us. Then we will be like all the other nations, with a king to lead us and to go out before us and fight our battles." This request, recorded in 1 Samuel 8, was not merely a political desire but a spiritual rejection of God's direct rule through the judges. Samuel, now old and with sons who did not follow his ways, was displeased by their request, but the Lord told him, "Listen to all that the people are saying to you. It is not you they have rejected, but they have rejected me as their king. As they have done from the day I brought them up out of Egypt until this day, forsaking me and serving other gods, so they are doing to you. Now listen to them, but warn them solemnly and let them know what the king who will reign over them will claim as his rights." Samuel warned the people that a king would take their sons for military service, their daughters for perfumers and cooks and bakers, the best of their fields and vineyards and olive groves, a tenth of their grain and vintage, their menservants and maidservants, and the best of their cattle and donkeys. He warned them that they would become the king's slaves and that when that day came, they would cry out for relief from the king they had chosen, but the Lord would not answer them in that day. But the people refused to listen to Samuel. "No," they said. "We want a king over us. Then we will be like all the other nations, with a king to lead us and to go out before us and fight our battles." When Samuel heard all that the people said, he repeated it before the Lord. The Lord answered, "Listen to them and give them a king." Thus began the monarchy in Israel, recounted in the remaining chapters of 1 Samuel, the book of 2 Samuel, and the beginning of 1 Kings. The first king, Saul, was anointed by Samuel after a divine selection process. Saul was from the tribe of Benjamin, the smallest tribe, and he was described as an impressive young man without equal among the Israelites, a head taller than any of the others. When Samuel anointed him, he said, "Has not the Lord anointed you ruler over his inheritance? When you leave me today, you will meet two men near Rachel's tomb, at Zelzah on the border of Benjamin. They will say to you, 'The donkeys you set out to look for have been found.' And now your father has stopped thinking about them and is worried about you. He is asking, 'What shall I do about my son?' Then you will go on from there until you reach the great tree of Tabor. 3 men going up to worship God at Bethel will meet you there. One will be carrying 3 young goats, another 3 loaves of bread, and another a skin of wine. They will greet you and offer you 2 loaves of bread, which you will accept from them. After that you will go to Gibeah of God, where there is a Philistine outpost. As you approach the town, you will meet a procession of prophets coming down from the high place with lyres, timbrels, pipes, and harps being played before them, and they will be prophesying. The Spirit of the Lord will come powerfully upon you, and you will prophesy with them, and you will be changed into a different person. Once these signs are fulfilled, do whatever your hand finds to do, for God is with you." Saul's early reign showed promise. He led Israel to victory over the Ammonites, delivering the people of Jabesh-Gilead from their cruel threat. However, Saul's character flaws soon became apparent. In his impatience, he offered a burnt offering himself instead of waiting for Samuel, violating God's command. When Samuel confronted him, Saul made excuses rather than repenting. Samuel told him, "You have done a foolish thing. You have not kept the command the Lord your God gave you. If you had, he would have established your kingdom over Israel for all time. But now your kingdom will not endure. The Lord has sought out a man after his own heart and appointed him ruler of his people, because you have not kept the Lord's command." Saul's failure was further demonstrated in his disobedience regarding the Amalekites. God commanded Saul to completely destroy the Amalekites and all their possessions as judgment for their opposition to Israel during the Exodus. However, Saul spared Agag, the king of the Amalekites, and the best of the sheep and cattle, claiming they were for sacrifice to the Lord. When Samuel confronted him, Saul again made excuses, saying, "I did obey the Lord. I went on the mission the Lord assigned me. I completely destroyed the Amalekites and brought back Agag their king. The soldiers took sheep and cattle from the plunder, the best of what was devoted to God, in order to sacrifice them to the Lord your God at Gilgal. Samuel replied, "Does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in obeying the Lord? To obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed is better than the fat of rams. For rebellion is like the sin of divination, and arrogance like the evil of idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king." Samuel then killed Agag himself, and Saul and Samuel parted ways, never to meet again. The true, definitive king of Israel was David, a humble shepherd whose defining moment was his single-handed defeat of Goliath, 1 Samuel 17. The Philistines had gathered their forces for war and were camped between Soko and Azekah in Ephes-Dammim. Saul and the Israelites assembled and camped in the valley of Elah and drew up their battle line to meet the Philistines. The Philistines occupied one hill and the Israelites another, with the valley between them. A champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp. His height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a bronze helmet on his head and wore a coat of scale armor of bronze weighing 5,000 shekels. On his legs he wore bronze greaves, and a bronze javelin was slung on his back. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod, and its iron point weighed 600 shekels. His shield-bearer went ahead of him. Goliath stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects, but if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us." Then the Philistine said, "This day I defy the armies of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other." On hearing the Philistines' words, Saul and all the Israelites were dismayed and terrified. For 40 days, Goliath came forward every morning and evening and took his stand. David, the youngest son of Jesse, was sent to the battle lines to bring food for his brothers and to report back to their father. When David arrived, he heard Goliath's defiance and saw the fear of the Israelites. David said to the men standing near him, "What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" David's words were reported to Saul, and Saul sent for him. David said to Saul, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine, your servant will go and fight him." Saul replied, "You are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him, you are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth." But David said to Saul, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." Saul said to David, "Go, and the Lord be with you." Saul dressed David in his own tunic, put a bronze helmet on his head and dressed him in armor. David strapped on his sword over the tunic and tried walking around, because he was not used to them. "I cannot go in these," he said to Saul, "because I am not used to them." So he took them off. Then he took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag and, with his sling in his hand, approached the Philistine. Meanwhile, the Philistine, with his shield-bearer in front of him, kept coming closer to David. He looked David over and saw that he was little more than a boy, glowing with health and handsome, and he despised him. He said to David, "Am I a dog, that you come at me with sticks?" And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. "Come here," he said, "and I'll give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals." David said to the Philistine, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands." As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword and drew it from the sheath. After he killed him, he cut off his head with the sword. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran. Then the men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout and pursued the Philistines to the entrance of Gath and to the gates of Ekron. Their dead were strewn along the Shaaraim road to Gath and Ekron. When the Israelites returned from chasing the Philistines, they plundered their camp. David took the Philistines' head and brought it to Jerusalem. He put the Philistines' weapons in his own tent. David's victory over Goliath made him a hero in Israel, but it also aroused Saul's jealousy. Saul became David's enemy for the rest of his life, seeking to kill him on multiple occasions. David, however, refused to harm Saul, recognizing him as the Lord's anointed. David's integrity during this period of persecution demonstrated his character and his trust in God's timing. After Saul and his sons were killed in battle against the Philistines, David was anointed king over Judah, and later over all Israel. He captured the fortress of Jerusalem, establishing it as the political and spiritual capital of the nation. David brought the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem with great celebration, dancing before the Lord with all his might. He desired to build a temple for the Lord, but God told him through the prophet Nathan that his son would build the temple. Instead, God made a covenant with David that would have eternal significance. The Davidic covenant, 2 Samuel 7 verses 12 to 16, is the most critical event in this epoch, and one of the supreme moments in salvation history. God said to David, "When your days are over and you rest with your ancestors, I will raise up your offspring to succeed you, your own flesh and blood, and I will establish his kingdom. He is the one who will build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father, and he will be my son. When he does wrong, I will punish him with a rod wielded by men, with floggings inflicted by human hands. But my love will never be taken away from him, as I took it away from Saul, whom I removed from before you. Your house and your kingdom will endure forever before me, your throne will be established forever." This was the fifth of God's 6 great promises, an unconditional guarantee that David would have an eternal dynasty and that his descendant would build a permanent temple and rule forever. This covenant is the legal title deed for the Messiah, guaranteeing he would descend from David. David's response was one of humility and gratitude. "Who am I, sovereign Lord, and what is my family, that you have brought me this far? And as if this were not enough in your sight, sovereign Lord, you have also spoken about the future of the house of your servant, and this decree, sovereign Lord, is for a mere human. What more can David say to you? For you know your servant, sovereign Lord. For the sake of your word and according to your will, you have done this great thing and made it known to your servant. How great you are, sovereign Lord! There is no one like you, and there is no God but you, as we have heard with our own ears." David's later failures, like the sin with Bathsheba and the murder of her husband Uriah, underscore the fact that this covenant was based on God's steadfast love, not the king's righteousness. When Nathan the prophet confronted David with his sin, David repented deeply, and God forgave him, though there were consequences for his sin. David's Psalm of Repentance, Psalm 51, reveals a heart broken by sin and restored by God's grace. The worship and moral instruction of this golden age are preserved in the rich supplemental books, the Psalms, many penned by David, which serve as the prayer and song book of Israel, and the wisdom books of Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Solomon, mostly attributed to David's son, Solomon. The Psalms express the full range of human emotion and experience, from praise and thanksgiving to lament and confession, all directed toward God. Proverbs offers practical wisdom for daily living, emphasizing the fear of the Lord as the beginning of wisdom. Ecclesiastes reflects on the meaning of life and the pursuit of fulfillment, concluding that the whole duty of man is to fear God and keep his commandments. The Song of Solomon celebrates the beauty of marital love, often interpreted allegorically as representing the love between God and his people. Solomon ascended to the throne after David's death, and God appeared to him in a dream, offering to give him whatever he asked. Solomon asked for wisdom to govern the people, and God was pleased, giving him not only wisdom but also riches and honor beyond compare. Solomon's wisdom was demonstrated in the famous case of the two women who claimed the same baby. Solomon proposed to cut the baby in half, revealing the true mother who would rather give up her child than see it harmed. Solomon's wisdom became famous throughout the world, and people came from all nations to hear his wisdom. Solomon fulfilled the initial part of the Davidic covenant by constructing the magnificent temple in Jerusalem, the physical symbol of God's dwelling with his people. The temple was built with the finest materials and according to the pattern God had given. When the temple was dedicated, Solomon prayed a powerful prayer of dedication, asking God to hear the prayers of his people when they prayed toward the temple. God's glory filled the temple, and fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offering and the sacrifices, and the glory of the Lord filled the temple. The priests could not enter the temple of the Lord because the glory of the Lord filled it. When all the Israelites saw the fire coming down and the glory of the Lord above the temple, they knelt on the pavement with their faces to the ground, and they worshipped and gave thanks to the Lord, saying, "He is good, his love endures forever." The historical perspective of this era is further provided by the supplemental books of 1 and 2 Chronicles, which re-narrate the history from a priestly, temple-focused viewpoint, centering heavily on the fidelity of the Davidic line. Chronicles emphasizes the spiritual aspects of the monarchy, particularly the importance of worship and obedience to God. However, Solomon's reign ended in tragedy. Despite his wisdom, Solomon disobeyed God by marrying many foreign women who turned his heart after other gods. He built high places for his wives' gods and worshipped them, doing evil in the eyes of the Lord. As a result, God said to Solomon, "Since this is your attitude and you have not kept my covenant and my decrees, which I commanded you, I will most certainly tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your subordinates. Nevertheless, for the sake of David your father, I will not do it during your lifetime. I will tear it out of the hand of your son. Yet I will not tear the whole kingdom from him, but will give him one tribe for the sake of David my servant and for the sake of Jerusalem, which I have chosen." Thus ends the chapter of the royal kingdom, a story of glory and failure, of divine promise and human weakness. The Davidic covenant established the eternal dynasty through which the Messiah would come, and the temple became the center of Israel's worship. Yet Solomon's idolatry set the stage for the division of the kingdom, which would be the focus of the next epoch in salvation history.